I'm sorry. And he died, passed away in 1932. And he started the store in 1885 with his brother. Then, after that, he had two sons, Charlie and Willis. And those are the two sons of Edson Smith and Sons. So Charlie was my grandfather and Willie was my uncle. And my grandfather had one side of the store, which was the hardware side, and my uncle had the north side of the store, which was kind of housewares and waste baskets and dish pans and things like that. And each one of them took care of their own. Then my uncle retired, I can't tell you exactly what year, and my grandfather had the whole store until my father bought it in the early 1960s. Then I bought it in the early 1970s.
Much younger than you, I would go to the store, and the stores were open on the weekends on Saturday. They weren't open on Sunday, but they were open until 10 o'clock on Saturday. And I would work in the store. I would push the carts back that people used, and I would stock shelves, and I would help in the meat department. I'd grind hamburger. I would do things like that. And when I first got started, I was just there because my mother and dad both were involved in the store. And they would work on Saturday nights. The store wouldn't close until 10 o'clock. And for the most part, stores didn't close when it was time to close. They closed when there wasn't anybody else in the store. People didn't lock the door. They were open until everybody had left. It was kind of a
I was at the movie theater with my mom. We were seeing Letters to Juliet, and then the tornado sirens went off.
Second question, what do you remember?
I remember the tornado sirens went off about 45 minutes into the movie, And then the manager came out, and everything was pitch black because the power went out. And then when the manager came out, she said we need to get down to the basement. So everyone evacuated, and we started heading out. And the movie was like, there was a lot of older people there, so we let them go first because there were stairs and the manager helped them and stuff. So we got to under the balcony, about to the doors to the stairs, and then we heard a big bang, so we all like dropped to the floor, and I was really scared at that moment because my mom was behind me and there was a lady in between us. So we all got down, and the lady she wrapped her arm around my stomach, and she was like my mom at that moment because my mom wasn't there to comfort me, so that's what she did. And then after that, it was literally like 2 seconds, and then it was over, and it sounded like a train was going through the movie theater. And after that, we all got up, and we went to where the screen was, and we saw that there was a huge hole in the side of the ceiling. So we were all kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, like devastated, I guess. And then we went outside, and everything was like destroyed. It was devastating to see.
What happened to the goals of this project?
The goals of the project initially were to salvage as many buildings as we could, and to repair those that could be salvaged. After several weeks, when we felt we had that under control, we could see that prior to the storm, there were some empty buildings. We'd lost some businesses, so our local economy was suffering a little bit. And so we saw the importance of not only rebuilding, but bringing back more than we had before. So the goal, of course, was to rebuild and repair, but also to make Elmwood more viable and stronger afterwards as far as our...
Is there anything that you miss that the tornado took away from Elmwood?
Well, we miss seeing some of the old buildings that we lost. That was an important part of Elmwood, and an important thing to the people that live here. But I think, aside from just keeping those as memories, I think, as time goes on, we'll still appreciate those things, but we'll see that they can be replaced, and that we're a much better and sound community than we were before.
Yes, I remember that they were having this statue come to Elmwood, and then Laredo Taft had been a member, lived in this town, and the statue had been put up and was covered, and I happened to be standing on the south side of the park when they unveiled it, and they just pulled that big gold cover off, and there it was. It was a beautiful statue, and it still is.
Was there any rationing during the war?
Oh yeah, you didn't have much sugar, and there was several things in the food line that you couldn't get. And gasoline was one, I think, too. You didn't get much gasoline for their car.
I was in Scott Air Base for 2.5 years, and then I was called overseas. And I went to England. And from there I went to France. I was in France until the war. horrendous.
Experience and involvement with the Korean War.
My involvement in the Korean War. Well, I tell you, I got drafted in early 1952, and they sent me down to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to take my gunnery training and tanks into it. And Elmwood would come in. That came in to dock was the Missouri, USS Missouri, the battleship, which the armistice was assigned in World War II on it by General Bernard MacArthur. And that's twice it's about the size of the ship we was on. We picked up the rest of our battle gear, boarded ship again. They handed me an M1 rifle, which I had never fired, never seen, because I was tanks with the Army. And I said, that won't do me no good. And the next thing they handed me was a Thompson submachine gun, which all tankers carry. We were sent to Korea, went into the harbor. From there, I was sent up to my company, and I think it was the 73rd Tank Battalion. Some of the guys that I went through basic training, one of them went all the way with me to Korea in the same outfit. He was in another company. And we corresponded back and forth all the while we was there. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of battles. The country of Korea is very hilly, very mountainous. And gentlemen, it's the coldest place I've ever been in my damn life. We got caught in the cold, and we hadn't even been issued our winter gear yet. It was dressed basically in short, not, light pants like you got on there. Then they gave us our thing, and we was pretty well all over. So I've been clear up to Coonmaw Valley, which is about 30 miles north of the 32nd parallel. By being the largest armament piece of equipment that could be traveled, we pretty well caught a lot of the battles that was in there. And Korea wasn't fought like World War II was. They conquered. All we had to do was stop and hold them. Very different fighting type. A lot of GIs lost their lives in it. I've seen about anything that you really want to think you could see in your life. There was a lot of GIs that went down the older people was backed you all the way. At that time, the younger generation could not see the war. I don't know whether you gentlemen, I know you're not old enough that the Vietnam came back to the same thing. They was never really thanked for fighting in the battles in Korea until, I'm going to say, in the past 10 years. Means a lot to you when they ask the veterans to stand and look up, and it makes you feel pretty good.
First question, describe your experience and involvement with the Vietnam War.
Well, I went over in 1962, and I completed my mission in 1966, which was almost 4 years involvement in Vietnam. And I went from all aspects of the phases of the war, from Cam Ranh Bay to Chu Lai. I fought at Hue, I fought at Pleiku, I fought at Hamburger Hill, I fought at Hill 835, and I covered the basic Ho Chi Minh Trail from Hanoi to Saigon through Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. And in between the experiences I had was the Vietnam War was quite a different war because they had a lot of camouflage holes in the ground, and they were stretched across the holes with piano wire. And I was fortunate because I was in a tank, and most of my experiences with this was the tank would just run over the holes and to destroy the enemy's function of trying to destroy the American, which was the ground people. And what they would do is they couldn't see these camouflage holes, so they would step on the piano wire, maybe a twig from a tree or a hole in the ground. They would fall through it and they would completely paralyze them. They would get stabbed in the groin, things of that nature. Sometimes they would come from a tree and they'd hit you in the chest. They were wooden pegs, but the piano wire made them real strong, and when you damaged it, these would fly out of trees and whatever, you know. It was a camouflage war against the United States. And basically, ironically, we never did know the North from the South because they all look the same. You know, the Viet Cong and the South Vietnamese were basically the same people. I mean, you didn't know who was your enemy and who was your friend. So basically, I was a tanker, and we shot napalm. We also shot rounds from the tank to destroy the villages and things of that nature. But I never was on the ground. I was always in a tank, so I was pretty well protected.
In what ways was the community involved?
Well, I can't really say what the community did while we were in Vietnam, but I do know that when we come back from Vietnam, we were not recepted very well. I mean, it was just a time of political war, and we were not accepted very well. But in the meantime, since I've been out and back, I have joined the VFW, and we have a plaque up on our memorial in the park for just Vietnam veterans. And the ones that couldn't get their name on the plaque, we put cement bricks in the ground to represent the people that fought in Vietnam. But we, community-wise, we always have a veterans thing on November 11th. We always have Memorial Day services for all veterans, not just Vietnam. And we march to the cemetery and put a wreath on the unknown tomb out there, unknown soldier out there. And basically that's about it, you know. But we were not accepted very well when the war was over with, you know.
I was in the Marine Corps. I joined right out of high school, which was, I was in the delayed entry program. I went into boot camp December 1st of 1987, and I got out in 92. So when you say Desert Storm, there's little ambiguity about that because there were two Desert Storms, basically. I was an avionics technician on helicopters in the Marine Corps, so I did communication navigation equipment, and I was on deployment off the coast of Africa when Desert Shield began, during Desert Shield, when he invaded Kuwait. We had high-frequency radios in the helicopters, and we sat on the flight deck of the aircraft carrier and listened to the bombs hit Baghdad that first night, televised by BBC. So that was my first experience with the happenings of the Middle East. I remained off the coast of Africa. We were doing another deployment there. We were part of the evacuation effort for Liberia. There was a revolution going on there, and the Americans had kept troops in the American embassy, and we were resupplying them. So I spent about 8 months off the coast of Africa, and then I joined the rest of the deployment in the Mediterranean, and we basically patrolled shipping lanes in the Mediterranean during Desert Storm until we returned. Sure. We would fly supplies into the embassy, and our helicopter, the helicopter I was on, did receive fire a couple times. So we were shot at, but we had no casualties at the time, so I mean everything was fine, but we did find some bullet holes in the fuselage. So that was kind of scary.
I spent 11 years on active duty in the Air Force, and then in 1999 I moved back to Elmwood here and moved the family here, and I'm part of the Illinois Air National Guard, the 182nd Airlift Wing here in Peoria. We fly C-130s. And realistically, the war started basically on September 11th. I was here at home on September 11th, and obviously the news came on and my phone rang and we got recalled into the Air Guard. What most people don't realize is the Illinois Air National Guard was one of the very few that actually flew September 12th. I led a 6-ship formation of C-130s out to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we flew out there to pick up a special team, rapid assessment and initial detection team, because we weren't sure where other targets were, because we do know, Chicago could have been a target or other places, and so we needed these guys and their special equipment and their expertise back closer to the Midwest where they belong. So we actually flew on September 12th, and it was very eerie feeling. It was very, very quiet all the way out to New Mexico and back. And when we landed in New Mexico, obviously it created a stir because we were the only thing flying. And it was amazing to see all the airliners parked and, all the busy airfield like Albuquerque, New Mexico, where it was completely quiet. From then on, we really just, Operation Enduring Freedom kicked off, where we went in into Afghanistan and took out the Taliban and began operation. Our job there was to bring in supplies, troops. We did medical evacuations and that effect. We deploy over there for basically 120 days in country. So, and then we swap out halfway in between. So we did that in 2002. In 2003, the United States went back into Iraq, and Operation Iraqi Freedom kicked off. And again, we were deployed. We got home in the fall of 2002, and we left early in March of 2003. Again, the Illinois Air National Guard, we went over to a base called Minhad in the United Arab Emirates there, and set up a bare base. And we started flying operations out of there. The Illinois Air Guard was actually one of the very first C-130 units. Since then, we basically have deployed every calendar year over to different bases in Kuwait, actually in Balad, which is an air base just outside of Baghdad. We've been to Bagram. We've been to K2, which is Karchakhanabad in Uzbekistan. We've done missions out of Kandahar and so we've deployed. I deployed 9 times since 2000 since 2000 into the Middle East with the Illinois Air National Guard and flying missions over there.
In what way has the community supported the war and has been involved?
Everybody always asks us, and thanks us for our service. And as a civilian or an Air National Guard member, we're very, very different militarily. On an active duty military base, you have a huge support structure. So it's very different in a community such as Elmwood, to where only a few members of the whole community deploy, and so it's very different. But everybody has always asked and thanked us for our service. But I keep telling them, I go, we couldn't do what we do today if we didn't have the support from friends and family and community. The community itself has been phenomenal. They have a teacher in the grade school named Mrs. Pat Vaughn, and she does a phenomenal job at trying to stay in touch with the military members and teach her students about what's going on. First came home after September 11th, and especially after 2003, the high school football program had us out for opening ceremonies prior to a football game, when we brought out the game ball and things to that effect. So we've done that.